focus is get to the closing table for the customer I'm representing, that I'm working for, and high five everybody. And if that other agent is a total knucklehead, the sweetest revenge is a commission check.
Welcome back to the show. My guest today is none other than the president of the Florida Realtors Association, Mike McGraw. Mike, should I call you Mr. President?
No, sir, please don't. I'm a member like everybody else.
Well, the significance of your role outside of just how cool it is, I mean, I don't know if they're allowing you to sell any homes this year because of how busy you are, but the reason why the Florida, Association is a little bit more involved than maybe some presidents is because there's 238,000 realtors in Florida. The number one state for realtors, the second behind it, I believe you said was California at 218, 219. So this could be a full-time gig. It should be. And you've got to see the table, political tables and all sorts of things. You find yourself driving your old 60s Corvette around eating barbecue in your free time, which I'm not sure how much of that there is, but we're going to jump into some really cool topics today, topics that I'm not sure everyone listening understands about the association and everything that goes into it. But thanks for joining the show, Mike.
You're welcome. It's good to be here.
Let's jump into your role and kind of defining maybe what the president of a state association looks like and maybe how that differs because of how big Florida is compared to some other states.
So what's simple is, my job is to govern. Our staff's job is to manage. And this is truly, it's an honor because there's 238,000 members in Florida and only one gets to be president. So it is truly an honor to be here. And you're right, it's not full-time, but it's pretty close. We have 51 local boards. Last year, Christina Pappas was president with the Kai's company. And she allowed me to go visit every local board that I could visit. And we ended up doing, I think it was 47 or 48 local boards.
Wow.
I mean, there was 2 days, we did 5 boards in one day.
Wow.
I mean, just boom, boom, boom.
The 3 that you didn't get to are listening to this being like, man, why didn't Mike visit me?
They have an open invitation. Call me, I'll come. And, but my focus was I wanted to show up at these local boards and just listen to them.
Yeah.
Throw a couple ideas out and then just sit back and listen. And I remember going to one board, Dixie-Gilchrist County. And it's up in the panhandle of in the Big Bend area of Florida, and I might be totally wrong, but I want to say 400 members. Mm-hmm. And when I showed up, it was me, a staff person, their AE, and 4 members.
Wow!
And they're like, no one's ever come to see us. I said,
yeah.
Well, here, let's talk.
Yeah,
but they pay the same dues the rest of the members do. They pay the same dues Miami does, and Broward, and Orlando, and Tampa. But I just wanted them to know that, if you have a question, pick up the phone and call.
Yeah.
Send me a text.
Just to give perspective on size, I mean, we look at markets that have 1,000 realtors or more to put a magazine in. Lincoln, Nebraska, at the time when we launched it, only had 600 realtors. That smallest board, one of the smallest boards just in Florida, is 400. So yeah. Just that. Why do you feel like because Florida isn't the largest state in terms of size or population, I don't think. So why is there so many realtors compared to other states?
Our licensure law is pretty lax. Mm-hmm. 63 hours is all it takes to get a license. Take the class, pass that test, take the state test. And what's interesting, even with the what I call low bar for licensure, we still have like a 40 to 50% fail rate on the state test.
Wow.
And the fail rate typically goes up on the second try.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So if you fail,
because people think they got it. They're like, I don't need to study. I'm just going to do it again, and then they do worse.
I don't know, but I mean, and so because our governor, and it's not just the current governor, it's been consistent. Their thinking is that a license is a job. Mm-hmm. So they attach it to, we have 238,000 realtors. Well, and I'll use the Orlando market. We have about 21,000 realtors in Orlando. And by the way, Aaron Luden does y'all's magazine here. Great guy, great job. we have about 3,000 listings or sales per month. And if there's a buyer and a seller, that means there's 6,000 sales, sides. Well, there's a whole bunch of realtors that can get paid that month, like
right.
15,000.
Right.
But then you factor in all of y'all's customers who are doing 2 and 3 and 4 and 6 deals a month. Now that number of people not getting paid just grew.
Mm.
So it's a very interesting dynamic.
So they want jobs. They want it to grow. Actually, they want jobs to grow. So they're not going to change that. And you actually have a seat. And this is something that I didn't understand, and I'm sure many don't. You actually have a seat at a political table throughout the year as it pertains to the state. What does that look like? Do you guys get together once a month, once a year?
So this is what we call RPAC, the Realtor Political Action Committee. And let me just put a little statement in here. Historically, all across the nation, RPAC is very bipartisan.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're typically right in the middle. We focus on housing issues. But like in Florida, we just passed a $711 million Live Local Act. That's to help first-time home buyers get into homes. That is unprecedented, that amount of spending. But I will tell you that bill came from us being at the table, sitting in rooms with the Senate president, the Speaker of the House, the governor, all the legislators. We're sitting having these hard conversations like, guys, it's important for people to be homeowners versus renters. Now, if they want to be a renter, great.
Right.
But in this country, most people dream of owning a piece of dirt.
Yeah.
And so this is something that helps them. And in years past, we didn't get near that much money. But we went in and fought hard this year and got, like I said, over $700 million.
Now, you also mentioned when we last talked that the board presidents of all the states get together twice a year. When you guys get together, what do you talk about at those meetings? Are they also, is it similar to where you're talking about what the national laws need to be like for housing and all that and how it pertains to local government?
We're talking about like 1031 exchanges on Capitol Hill. We're talking about FHA, VA guidelines. We're talking about appraisal guidelines. We're talking about stuff that affects the real estate industry nationwide. But then we're also comparing notes. What are you doing for RPAC? What are you doing for your charities? What are you doing for your products, tools, and services? And I mentioned to you a while ago, and on this other screen, this is outdated a little bit, but it's pretty close. Georgia, 46,000 members. I'll use Indiana, where you're from. What did I say a while ago? That was right here, 20,000 members.
20,000, yeah.
Iowa, 8,000 members in the whole state.
Right.
And my local board has 21,000.
Yeah.
My state is 238,000.
Is that the largest, your local one?
No. Miami's the largest in the nation.
Okay.
Broward's number 2. Broward or Houston's, they're 2 and 3. Orlando's typically about number 15, 12 to 15 in the nation.
Yeah. So I asked you before the show about why we got into talking about designations, about specifically like CRS and some of these other acronyms. How did you put it? What do most people see it as?
Alphabet soup.
Alphabet soup at the end of your name.
Yeah.
Well, and so when I talk to realtors, maybe it's a generational thing. When I talk to newer realtors, maybe 10 years or less that are a little bit younger, a lot of times they don't show up to certain events. They only do the amount of CE that they have to do to continue to selling real estate. And their thought is, why would I spend any more time doing some of this education? If I'm selling houses, fine. And that would take away from selling more houses. I don't need that. It's all about the dollars so I can spend more time with my friends and family. And some might say that that's a bad attitude. I also think the other side of that coin is if they're right, if you don't need it and you can still sell the same amount of homes. Well, so then the question then becomes why? And I think you had a good answer about that. So you want to dig in on that? So
number one, I call it sharpening the sword.
Mm-hmm.
You're out selling homes every day, but your sword gets a little bit dull at some point in time. And I've been in this business over 25 years now. In the last couple of days, I've signed up for 2 more classes that I can take online. And my goal is to get something, just get me a nugget out of that class. I like the instructors. I trust the instructors that I signed up for. So I'm going to do that. The other side of it is, for example, CRS, Certified Residential Specialist. there's a great referral resource because
Yeah.
you go onto social media or you go onto their website and you say, hey, I need I need a realtor in Indianapolis, but I want to, and if you have your profile filled out properly, I want someone been in the business at least 15 years. I want someone who loves dogs, loves cats. You can put parameters in there, or they focus in, Noblesville versus, another part of Indianapolis. But a lot of it's referrals. I get a lot of referrals from other people that are looking for an RPAC major investor, looking for a CRS, looking for, I don't get many for GRI, but yeah, I do it for education. I do it for referrals.
Yeah. You mentioned the city, Indianapolis. You spent quite a bit of time here. I see that Corvette on your back wall. I've mentioned that before. That's your actual issue that you were featured in for Real Producers there with Aaron Luden. Why have you come? I think most people can figure it out by now, but why have you come to Indianapolis so frequently over the years?
I am a big fan of motorsports. I'm a big fan of the Indianapolis 500.
Yes, sir.
I haven't been in a few years, but I'm ready to go back now that Roger Penske owns the track. I love what he's doing. It's like, all right, I'm ready to go back. So this next year, I will not be president. I have a whole lot more free time.
Yeah.
I'm going to Kentucky Derby next year. I'm going to do that.
Are you going to drive or fly? Because the headquarters for Corvette is right there near the
Bowling Green. I've been to that. I've been there like 4 times.
Yeah.
But no, I'm going to the Kentucky Derby next year. I'm going to do the Indy 500. I'm taking my wife to Hawaii. That's the payoff that she gets for me being president
for a year. Yeah.
Around the world.
Well, and not to interrupt you, but you said it's actually a 5-year commitment because to be president, there's you have to jump through 5 different roles, right? So this hasn't been just a year-long commitment for you.
So in Florida, we have secretary, treasurer, vice president, president-elect, president. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to do all 5, but historically, no one jumps the line unless you're just really doing something bad. But yeah, it's a 5-year commitment. And the first 3 years aren't that bad.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of travel. Yeah. But once you get into president-elect, things ramp up a little bit. Once you get into president, Florida has one of the highest percentages of international buyers. Canada's our number one buyer.
Okay. Now, when you say buyer, do you mean like someone who's physically moving, or those are investors, or
both? Both. Canada's number one.
Canadians they typically moving from Canada to Florida?
Some of them invest, some of them move. I was in Toronto a couple of weeks ago, and everyone I talked to there have investment properties in Florida.
Sure.
When there's 2 foot of snow in Canada, they come to Florida, and then they rent it out the rest of the time. And most of them, they're fascinated either with the beach or Disney. So they get to the coast or they come to Central Florida.
Oh, that's us. If you look at the Midwest, there's a lot of Indiana-based companies that have, a branch in Florida. Because it never fails every single year. Like for the majority of the year, I'm like, I love Indianapolis. I love Indiana. This is home. Right. And then it hits about January, February. I'm like, why do I do this? And that's when we come down and see you, man.
So here's the deal. When you're up there shoveling snow, just remember, we're shoveling sunshine.
Okay.
It's a little different, not quite as heavy.
So your reward or her reward, I guess, is travel, and you're going to go to all these sporting events. Yeah. Bowling Green, you mentioned going to the Corvette exhibit. What's fascinating that I was thinking about is the sinkhole. Have you been since the sinkhole? I
was in there a month before the sinkhole happened. I've been there twice since.
It's pretty interesting how, to be honest, since that, I know it was devastating because it ruined 12 or 13 of the coolest Corvettes, and they salvaged a few of them. But now it's the biggest thing that I remember when I visited. It is the coolest part of the exhibit because they have a video of it happening. They have it all completely rebuilt, and the cars, what happened to them. I can't even remember some of the other details, but I remember the sinkhole.
What's more fascinating to me is the building did not collapse.
Right.
So the building stayed there. It's just collapsed right in the center. And like you said, there was 8, 10, 12 cars that went with it, and they've rebuilt most of them. There's a few of them they couldn't do, and a couple of them they couldn't get back out. But pretty interesting.
This is a nice segue talking about tragedies and trauma. One of the big things that I think Florida faces that your role is impacted by is hurricane relief. Even in the last couple of years, I know Ian, you were in office when Ian hit. Can you share with us kind of what that looked like in terms of when it happened and then the relief after?
I mean, Florida gets a hurricane every couple of years. And when I say every couple of years, we get them, the ones that do major damage. And, Michael hit the Panhandle 4 or 5 years ago. And then Ian came in and hit Sanibel pretty hard, Fort Myers Beach pretty hard. And what's interesting is, and I'm going to start at NAR first, and I don't know who did theirs first, but NAR has the Realtor Relief Foundation. And they're there to help in natural disasters. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because, and then Florida has the Disaster Relief Foundation. We do the same thing. But what's interesting is when a hurricane is coming in, as an officer, I start getting phone calls from around the nation from the Realtor Relief Foundation officers. They start calling. I know them all. They're like, "You okay?" "Yeah, I'm okay, but I'll call you in 2 days when let me get the hurricane passed." Yeah, and then I'll call you. And they literally within days will send a check to our Disaster Relief Foundation. Wow. And then we have a system set up, and I'm not exact, but realtors can do the application, which is, yay long. It's very simple. Yeah. And what we do is we give them a check just to get them over the hump. Yeah. And they may have insurance, but they may have, there's no power. They can't go to the ATM. None of the credit cards are working. Right. So we figure that out real quick, and we get them the money ASAP. And
it's not a little bit. You mentioned it was like 1.4 million donated during Ian relief from the Florida Board and NAR.
Yep. We did $1.4 million ish for Ian, and it's pretty cool because you walk up and you give people a check, and it's not the money, it's the fact that you care. Yeah. You walk up to these members and they just start they're emotional because they've lost their whole life. Yeah. When Ian came through, I went down a couple of times. We've got a member here in Florida that he's the hurricane chaser. He runs to all of them and just works his butt off. Yeah. And we would show up at these houses. I'm like, "Kevin, just tell me what to do." And I'm not your age, but he's my age. We're up on these roofs, tarping them and working. Everybody's like, "Y'all need to get off." It's like, we'll get off when our bodies tell us to, but it's, you're just helping people, and you find out that someone's less fortunate than you. Yeah. Someone has, they're not as physical as I can be. Mm-hmm. And just to stop the roof from leaking until the insurance company comes out, that's a big deal.
Tell me about the housing market down in Fort Myers, Sanibel area. I was there just this months before it hit, and I have friends down there saying it's still pretty devastating. Like they haven't recovered. Like it literally knocked down buildings and ruined others. What do you think the process over the next 5 to 10 years looks like to build that back up? Do you think like the housing market definitely, like when people are selling it dipped? Is this a good time to buy? I mean, not to sound insensitive, but is this a good time to get involved in the real estate market down there? Does it still need to be helped? Like what's going on?
So, when it first happens, obviously you can't even get to houses because the roads are all blocked off and everything. But what's interesting is, at first there's no trades, but then supplies start showing up, trades start showing up. And, I've been down there since the hurricane, probably half a dozen times or more. And when you drive through now, unless you go right up to the coast or back into the neighborhoods, it looks pretty normal. You'll see some businesses with roofs still tore off and stuff. Occasionally you'll drive by a body of water and there's 5 boats piled up that no one's got to yet because it's not a priority. They got the channel clear. They got the roads clear. but I mean, they're still struggling. They're going to struggle for 1 to 3 years.
Okay. So that was my question is 3 years is the tops and maybe some people more if they don't handle it well, but, I'm fascinated and I haven't asked you this yet. So I'm curious to the answer, Mike, but the short-term rentals in Florida, it was at least in the Midwest to own it. And even in Florida, I know short-term rentals, especially like with Airbnb, VRBO, is a little bit hotter than other parts of the country. So much so that it's actually pretty hard to find. They're cracking down on it because of at least what I've heard is you've got HOAs that don't like it because you obviously the more renters, the less value your home is as a homeowner, and some other things. And then you have some condos where it's like 80% of them are owned by people who Airbnb them. So they're cracking down on the laws. What, from your perspective, being on the board and sitting in those meetings, is it bad for the economy? Is it good? Like what side of the fence are you with short-term rentals in Florida?
Mm-hmm. I'm Switzerland. I'm neutral.
Oh, you almost have to be.
But because think about it, and I pulled this up the other day. I live in a neighborhood of 81 homes, 1 to 3 acre lots. And out of curiosity, I pulled it up the other day. Every one of the homes in my neighborhood have homestead exemption on them. Mm-hmm. They're being claimed as owner occupied.
Yeah.
And I can tell you right now, I know everyone on my street and I know they all live there.
Sure.
But you go to and that's a private property right thing, because my HOA does not forbid short-term rentals, but I'd be a little aggravated if my neighbor decided to start doing a short-term rental.
Well, owner occupied, correct me if I'm wrong, it only has to be 51% of the year for you to have it declared as owner occupied, right?
I think you're right. I'm not for sure, but
so in your neighborhood is probably not, they're probably not when they leave town renting it out, but in some neighborhoods, people are staying there for 50. Like someone from the Midwest might stay there for 51 or say they are. So it's owner occupied and then rent it out
the rest of the time.
Yeah.
So in Florida, we have a thing called a bed tax. So if you rent it for less than 7 months, then you have to charge the bed tax that you would charge at a hotel.
Oh, okay.
And, but from the homeowner's perspective, I really don't want the house next to me being rented by a different group of people every 3 days.
Right.
From the owner's perspective, if I got a mortgage that's $1,500 a month, $2,500 a month, and I can rent this thing out and my net's $150 a night, start running those numbers.
Yeah.
If I rent it out just 18 nights I just got my mortgage paid for.
Yeah, it's significant.
It's significant. Yeah. And my wife and I we've done Airbnbs. And we did one in Paris just recently. And it was funny because the directions were like 6 pages long to get into the unit, but it was perfect.
Yeah.
There's the door. You go in, you push the button and you walk 4 doors down. But there's this little place in the middle of Paris that we rented for half of what we'd pay at the Marriott.
Yeah.
And it was more convenient.
Sure.
And it was bigger. So it's like, this is a win-win for us. I had a little kitchen in it and everything.
Well, I got to be honest, as I'm looking across the nation, and I've got a network of people, even within real producers, that a lot of us own property for Airbnb short-term rentals. And we hop on a call every so often, just talk about what's going on in different parts of the country. And one of the big reasons is as we look to buy in other states, one thing you have to be conscious of is the government, because in certain states that are blue versus red, like they are more likely to shut down your opportunities for short-term rentals, change laws, make it harder. And Florida is interesting to me because I'm not really sure. Like Florida, I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure if I buy a short-term rental, if in a year they might say, "Hey, we're locking this down. You're not grandfathered in. Get out of here, or get a long-term rental, or just no renters at all. You got to sell." Hawaii is interesting because in most parts of Hawaii, it's almost like a permit based system, and like they're out. So like it's extremely hard to buy in Hawaii. But yeah, Florida, I can't figure it out. I can't figure out what's going on down there.
So I'm going to ask for a hall pass.
Okay.
I know that short-term rentals are constant conversations when we go to Tallahassee or we go to different boards and meetings. I've chosen not to make that my personal priority.
Right.
Because where I live, we don't have very many of them.
Right.
But I know our staff is 100% on it. They're in the city councils, the county commissions. they're in Tallahassee. They're having these conversations constantly. And that's one of those things where, okay, I'm going to focus on these other issues and I'm going to govern and let someone else, we have members that's all they do is short-term rental.
Yeah.
Guess what? You talk to staff. We have amazing lobbyists and y'all go and you get the laws you need passed.
Well, let's shift to that then, Mike. What are you passionate about in your role? You've got about half a year left now to get some real work done. What does that look like for you? What are you passionate about in this role, and what are you advocating for?
I'm going to continue to advocate, to work on advocacy. Our voice at City Council, County Commission, Tallahassee, Washington, D.C. And obviously that comes through RPAC. So we have to raise money. I'm focused on that. My goal is to have the highest fundraising year for Florida that we've ever had. And we break records every year. So the bar has been raised again. The highest participation, the most major investors. We're going to do it all. We're working on all of it. One of the things we're doing, we talked earlier, I'm a car guy. In the car world, there's something called Cars and Coffee. So we're doing what we call Cars and Coffee driven by RPAC. And the goal is to find those high gross commission income agents, your target customer.
Sure. And
if you start talking to those guys, almost all of them have a cool car.
Yeah.
And it may not be a classic Corvette, but it may be a Tesla. It may be, it's the newest Cadillac. It's the newest Mercedes. But let's get together for an hour, hour and a half. Let's drink a cup of coffee, eat a donut, talk about your cars, and then take 5 minutes to talk about RPAC, and it's important. So we're going around the state doing those. We've already done 8 or 9 of them. We have another 8 or 9 we're doing.
How do I get involved in that if I'm in Florida? Do you have like a Facebook group or is there something
so Florida Realtors pushes it out through their social media. The local boards push it out through their social media. I know my board, because that's the next one coming up, is the Orlando boards. They've already sent it out through their communications. Hey, sign up. And in fact, Aaron and I are getting ready to have a conversation on how we promote it through Real Producers. Because, Real Producers to me is amazing because in my opinion, you guys are capturing a group that the board can't capture.
Yeah.
Most boards can't get your group to come to an event.
Sure.
But yet, the Real Producers magazine in Orlando, they throw an event and you think you're going to the Oscars.
And that's one thing that early on we really wanted to work closely with the boards, and in some territories, I think we're in about 130 markets right now, and it's not, we don't have the same relationship with every board, but in most cases, the board realizes that if we work together, that we can communicate a message that is much stronger. And the thing about the top realtors, the ones that are typically, and a lot of people think, hey, that's a bad attitude. You don't show up to your board, like what we talked about in the beginning of the show. Right. But I think some of them are just misunderstood and they haven't really been shown what exactly they can accomplish if they do get involved more in the board. And with Real Producers working together, like a lot of board presidents will actually write in the magazine, kind of talk about what's going on. That gives them a chance to get more involved. And the ones at the top have a strong voice because everyone in the office looks to them for pretty much everything. Like that's why the vendor list and the magazines are so strong, because they go to Mike, number one realtor in the office, say, Mike, who do you use for plumbing? I want to know where you eat. I want to know where you shop. I want to wear the clothes you wear because I want to be just like you, because I want to sell as many houses like you. Right.
Right. 100%.
So, yeah, I think you're right there. And we love your involvement and everything that you've done. I love that you hang that up in your office. It's a really cool story. That's a cool issue, classic car issue. We're going to do that here in Indy for sure.
Yeah. I mean, to me, Indianapolis would be a fantastic place to do it, and maybe even do something with the Indianapolis
500
Speedway Museum and
for May. Yeah, I love it.
Or the 500. But I've actually got a friend of mine whose son works at the museum, and I was up there about a year ago, not for the 500, but I went to Indianapolis, and my brother and I was like, "Come on, let's go to the museum." We walked through there, and the young man that works there wasn't working that day; he was off site. But he had told me, he said, "Man, if you come, just call me. I'll walk you through here, and I'll tell you some stuff that most people don't know." And I missed that opportunity, but I'll go back and get it.
There you go.
And have some fun.
Well, lastly, Mike, I don't know that we got to this and you were somewhat passionate about it yesterday when we talked. So the C2EX, commitment to excellence, NAR designation is fairly new. Can you tell us about that and why it's important?
So professionalism is a huge concern across the entire nation. And I'll use Florida because we're only 63 hours of education, and you're not, the requirement is 14 hours post licensing or CE credits to keep your license. There's a lot of gaps in the professionalism. So NAR, probably about 3 or 4 years ago, went to something called the C2EX, commitment to excellence. And it's not just, you got to do production, you have to do classes, you have to have some community service involved in it. It's pretty intense to get it. And once again, all right, C2EX, all right, I got it. Big deal. Well, in reality, if you use it properly, it's a referral source.
Sure.
Because you have members all around the country that are committed to C2EX, and they're only going to refer to a C2EX.
And that's going to be a small pool of people right now.
A small pool of people, yeah. And most of those people, because of the volume, the transaction component, these aren't people that do 2 deals a year. These are people that do a good bit of business. They make a full-time living, and guess what? They probably have access to referrals.
Right.
So, I mean, it's a good, it's a good program. I know Florida just rolled out one called Board Certified, and it mirrors C2EX. But the reason we changed the name of it is, at least in Florida, you watch TV at night, and the attorney comes on. I'm a board certified trial attorney, or the doctors come on. I'm a board certified orthopedic surgeon. And our theory was, you know what? The consumer already has this term in their brain. Board certified, you must be special. So we went after it with the Realtor brand. And you're going to be, and once you finish the designation, our first class is going to be announced in August. And it's going to be, I'm hearing about 30 members are going to get it. And it's pretty tough to get. You have to have a lot of criteria to get it. And then you have to go through an interview. And part of the interview is contract questions. You have to get peer reviews, not just reviews from your customers.
Oh, wow.
Peer reviews from other agents.
Yeah.
And because it's professionalism. And then when you have your interview, which I'm hearing is about an hour long, one of the questions they give you is an ethics question. And you have to, here's the scenario. What's the ethical way to handle this? Yeah. And so, I've talked to one person who took the test, and she was like, and she's a good agent, a really good agent. She's like, hey, I'm nervous about this. And later on she said, I don't know if I passed this thing. And she did. I found out later, I pulled presidential privilege and called, and I'm like, yeah, she passed.
You got it.
But,
well, I always thought that was interesting when it comes to the closing table, that realtors are fighting for their clients, but they lose perspective sometimes. And I've never been a realtor, and I know this would be more difficult than I'm just making it out to be, but it makes more sense to me that more likely a scenario is that you'll have another deal with the agent across the table than you will with that actual client. So why would you not take care of that agent? Why would you not build that bridge, make sure that you're taking care of them so that they, in the next deal, or maybe if you're fighting for a deal, you're the one that they choose because you took care of them. I feel like this designation is helping with that.
So real estate is relationships. And what you're saying right there, I mean, take care of the other agents. And even if the agents are new or hard-headed or lacking in professional, I had an agent send me a snarky text yesterday on one of my listings about where the title company is. I didn't respond. And
you said, do you know who I am?
Yeah, no, I didn't say that. In fact, no, I don't put that on hardly anything. No, I don't use that at all. But it's interesting because, why would I respond and make a snarky comment back? Just shut up.
Yeah.
My focus is get to the closing table for the customer I'm representing, that I'm working for, and high five everybody. And if that other agent is a total knucklehead, the sweetest revenge is a commission check.
Yeah.
Go get paid and move on, and make a note. I don't want to deal with them again. But I want to be the agent that when there's multiple offers, because we still have multiple offers in this market. The listing that I put on under contract a couple of days ago had 8 offers.
Yeah.
So when I make an offer for a buyer and it's a multiple offer situation, I want that listing agent to say to the seller, hey, listen, I have 8 offers here. I can tell you that I've done this, worked with this guy. He's hard to work with. This guy I don't know. I know Mike McGraw. He'll do his job. He'll get us to the closing table. He'll communicate. I just make sure I do that. And then one quick little point. With my listings, I do what I call love calls, because I have a business partner and she doesn't like listings. They're so uncertain, especially in a balanced market.
Yeah.
And I told her, I said, it's called love calls. When you sit down at the listing appointment, you find out they love to take cruises and play golf, and they love their grandbabies. So Mondays and Thursdays, you pick up the phone, hey, Susan just called to say, hey, how you doing? You got any cruises planned? No, not yet. We're still looking at them. Okay. Hey, by the way, not much going on with your property right now. Let's talk about a price reduction. Have a nice day. You move on. It's a love call.
Okay.
I give them a little bit of love. And then the other thing I try to focus on is when I'm doing a transaction, and don't matter who it's with, my goal is once I get to 3 text messages, it's a phone call.
Yeah.
Because
that's wise.
Because the tone, a lot gets lost in a text message.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times, all right, I've done my 3 text messages, and I understand they're all little short ones, but I'm better off just to pick up the phone and say, hey, just letting you know, we really do need to take this offer. We really do need to, just put a voice to it.
I'll tell you, in my line of work, 3 text messages equals a phone call, because there's no response text messages. It's just you 3 text messages.
I get it.
So it's naturally a call back.
Yep.
Mike, you are the consummate professional, and we are honored to have had you on the show. Is there any last things that you want to give to the real estate community, not just in Florida, but across the nation, as hope for the future?
Everybody who wants to own a home deserves to own a home. Go to your local, your city, your county, your state. If there's down payment assistance, go get access to it. Help people buy homes. Help them fix their credit if that's part of what you provide. Help them own a home. Invest in our pack and go get educated. I'll just tell you that right now. I don't care if you've been in this thing 40 years. Go take a class. You'll learn something.
I love it. And you practice what you preach, Mike. The president of Florida Realtors, Mike McGraw. Thanks for being on the show.
You're welcome. Thank you, sir.
We'll see you next time, guys. If you are listening to this and you are not involved in your local market, make sure you do so. Just like Mike said, it is a big opportunity for the boards and the magazine to work together. And if there's not a magazine in your area and you know someone, or you yourself would like to bring it to your area, go to realproducersmag.com. We'll see you next time.